Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We are going to uncover the dramatically unexpected history of an idea that completely rewrites how we understand human connection. We're looking at a concept that literally started in the bombed-out ruins of a post-war nursery and then quietly staged a total psychological takeover of the modern world. It's the story of an intellectual rebellion, one that redefined our romantic lives, completely dictated the culture in our corporate boardrooms, and even explained the intense dynamics of our spiritual communities. So what we're really talking about today are the unseen ancient blueprints that govern nearly every single interaction you have.
But before we get to the history, I want you to think about a time you felt profoundly, unconditionally safe with someone. You know, the kind of absolute safety where you could completely drop your guard, maybe even make a terrible mistake, and know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the relationship would hold. Now contrast that deep exhalation of breath with a completely different feeling. Think of, say, a volatile boss who never told you where you stood, or a partner who subtly pulled away the exact moment you tried to get close. That feeling of walking on eggshells where your nervous system is just humming with anxiety. What we're talking about today isn't just a personality quirk. It's not a communication issue. It's an ancient, hardwired survival mechanism playing out in your life right now, and it's dictating your choices before you even consciously realize it.
The drama really begins in post-war London with this rogue psychiatrist named John Bowlby. Now, at this time in history, Freudian orthodoxy was the undisputed absolute law of the land in psychology. Freud's powerful disciples basically believed a baby's love for its mother was simply a transactional byproduct of feeding. You love who feeds you, end of story. And to argue otherwise, that was essentially career suicide. But Bowlby was looking at the tragic reality of children separated from their families during the Blitz of the Second World War. He realized these kids were physically safe and they were being fed, but they were experiencing profound, catastrophic grief. Some were literally withering away. So Bowlby defied the establishment. He made this shocking claim: attachment isn't about food. Connection is an evolved biological system as primal as our fear of predators. He proved that attachment is literally a matter of life and death, shaped by millions of years of human evolution to keep vulnerable infants close to a protector.
So the absolutely crucial point here is that Bowlby identified this concept of the secure base as the foundation of human development. Picture a toddler at a playground. They run confidently toward the slide, but suddenly a loud dog barks. The toddler freezes, turns around, and locks eyes with their parent. If the parent smiles and nods, providing that secure base, the toddler's nervous system settles, right? They go right back to playing. They literally turn their back on the parent to explore a dangerous world. But if that parent is volatile, angry, or just staring blankly at a phone, the exploring completely stops. All of that child's energy goes into frantically monitoring the caregiver. Over time, this creates an internal working model. It's a mental blueprint built for pure survival that we unwittingly carry right out of the nursery.
If we just trace the timeline of this theory, we see how this single psychological rebellion didn't stay confined to toddlers. It systematically conquered every single sphere of adult life over the next 5 decades. What started as a radical theory about babies crying for their mothers during a world war evolved into the foundational operating system for how we fall in love in the 80s, how we manage high-stakes teams in the 90s, and how we interact with the divine in the 2000s.
Section 2. Mapping Love in a Lab. Mary Ainsworth and the Strange Situation. Let's see how they actually tested this.
In the 1960s, Bowlby's brilliant colleague Mary Ainsworth figured out how to actually map this unseen blueprint in a laboratory. She created an experiment where toddlers were separated from their mothers in an unfamiliar room and then reunited. The genius of it was she wasn't focused on the crying when the mother left. She watched exactly what happened when the mother came back. And this brings us to a massive plot twist that hit the psychological community in 1987. Researchers Cindy Hazen and Philip Shaver matched Ainsworth's infant findings directly onto adult romantic relationships, and the fit was perfect. I mean, eerily perfect. Think about the avoidant style. The infant who seemed totally unbothered but was secretly terrified grew into the adult partner who pulls away and shuts down during a fight. Or the anxious style. The inconsolable infant became the partner who needs constant, desperate reassurance. The data revealed a staggering truth. In our most intimate adult love lives, we're mostly just running old survival software. Software written by a relationship we had no say in choosing, long before we could even speak.
Section 3. Bringing the blueprint to work. When the office becomes the new nursery.
The story takes an even more unexpected turn in 1990, when researchers realized this survival system doesn't suddenly just turn off when you put on a suit. It means your anxious or avoidant wiring is clocking in with you every single morning. It's dictating how you handle a tense negotiation or how you relate to your boss.
You hear the buzzword psychological safety everywhere today in modern management, right? Well, if you look closely at the dynamics, a team that trusts it can fail without punishment is acting exactly like that secure toddler exploring the playground. Conversely, picture a team with an unpredictable, volatile manager. They stop innovating. They stop taking risks. They literally redirect all their professional energy into monitoring the boss's mood instead of doing their actual jobs.
So what this means is that building a highly functional, resilient company isn't about finding extroverted people persons. It's about structuring concrete decisions that answer the primal question of whether the corporate world will respond when an employee reaches out. Just think about these organizational shifts. The first 90 days of a new job isn't a checklist of orientation tasks, it's literal attachment formation. And when leadership handles layoffs poorly or secretly, that sudden disappearance of a coworker's name from a Slack channel, that isn't just an administrative update. It registers to the human brain as a severe attachment rupture. And what happens next? The surviving team members react exactly like anxious toddlers. They stop working and they spend all day watching the metaphorical door, terrified they're going to be abandoned next.
Section 4. The leader as secure base. Care to dare.
This reality dramatically escalates the stakes for management, because whether they want the psychological burden or not, leaders automatically become attachment figures. Employees unconsciously look to the person in charge and ask, if things go wrong here, will I be safe? If you want to actually put this into practice, clinical psychologist George Kohlreiser mapped out exactly how leaders can provide that secure base. And notice that second point. It starts with being relentlessly dependable and honestly, delightfully boring in your consistency, rather than trying to be endlessly inspiring. You have to separate mere comfort from actual care. A leader who only reassures without ever challenging their team is basically like an overprotective parent. You don't build robust capability that way. You build a secure base by closing loops out loud, literally saying in a meeting, I'll find the answer to that and email you by Friday at noon, and then actually doing it. And most importantly, you solidify that trust by reacting gracefully the very first time an employee bravely pushes back against your ideas.
Section 5. When God is the caregiver, the ultimate extension of Bowlby's theory.
By 2005, the theory scales literally all the way up to the heavens. Psychologist Lee Kirkpatrick uncovered something incredibly fascinating. Our relationship with the divine follows the exact same biological survival rules as a toddler seeking a parent in the nursery. The data revealed two dramatic patterns in how humans attach to religion. The correspondence hypothesis shows that believers often project their existing healthy childhood blueprint onto a trustworthy God. Basically, if you had a warm caregiver, it's pretty easy to conceptualize a loving, present deity. But the compensation hypothesis, that is the dramatic flip side. Imagine a person who grew up in absolute, terrifying chaos with utterly unpredictable parents. The data shows these individuals often undergo sudden, intensely rigid conversions. They're frantically recruiting a perfectly structured, rule-bound God to urgently fill the terrifying gap left by their failed caregivers.
Because religious communities so closely mimic family structures. A leader standing in for a parent, a congregation acting as siblings, exploiting this trust lands as a devastating childhood attachment injury. This is exactly why safeguarding these institutions is a matter of profound psychological urgency. The tragic abuse scandals we see across faith traditions are the direct, devastating result of structural limits on trust not being rigorously enforced. Furthermore, this completely changes how we view spiritual crises. When someone comes to a pastor agonizing that God's love is conditional and they have to endlessly work to earn grace, they are often just perfectly describing their childhood caregiver. That is an attachment struggle masquerading as a theological one. Actually, let me repeat that, because it is just so vital. That is an attachment struggle masquerading as a theological one.
But here is the deeply hopeful climax of our historical drama, the concept of earned security. Everything we've discussed so far can sound a bit bleak, right? Like an unchangeable life sentence handed down to you in the nursery. But thanks to later research, we now know that this internal working model can actually shift and heal over time. A remarkably good marriage, a healthy, accountable spiritual community, or even just a steady, boringly consistent manager can slowly teach an anxious brain that it's safe to make a mistake without being abandoned. Over years of reliable connection, you can literally rewrite that original, faulty survival code.
It's an eerie, profound realization that explains so much of human behavior. None of this completely erases your original pattern, but it absolutely proves that your history is a starting point, not a final verdict. And the very first step to changing your narrative, to finally escaping the ghosts of the nursery once and for all, is simply recognizing the invisible lens through which you view the world. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Knowing that your closest relationships, at home, at work, and in your faith, are all running on ancient survival code, whose software are you currently running?